Day 82, I'm reading If God is Love, page 109. I grew up watching westerns and war movies, playing with toy guns, and conquering the world on a risk game board. Though I eventually became a pacifist, I found it difficult to leave these pastimes behind. I'd protest against war and yet attend movies that glorified military valor. I'd teach my children not to hit, then rent the Karate Kid for them to view. I complained how the violence on television impacted my children, but pretended it had no effect on me. More worrisome, I ridiculed movies that celebrated relationship as chick flicks. One day I read, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable. If there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. I realized I could no longer pretend what I did with my leisure time was irrelevant. Indeed, I began to suspect it is as reflective of my spiritual maturity as any arena of life. I've reached the age of my life when I've begun to actually think about retirement. There was a time when I dreamed of traveling, playing golf, and finally being able to focus all my attention on myself. Though I can certainly understand the need to slow down and refocus our energies as we age, I fear many of our visions of retirement are a celebration of self-absorption. The mature spiritual life doesn't culminate in the purchase of a recreational vehicle. In fact, the happiest retirees I know are those men and women who devoted their later years to bettering the world. They gather food and clothing for the poor. They urge political leaders to use their power for good and noble ends. They mentor youth. They volunteer in hospice and hospitals, soup kitchens and schools. They joke often about having no time for retirement, that they are too busy. Yet filling their leisure with gracious activity has infused their lives with joy and meaning. Living graciously at home, work, and play is the greatest challenge of life. The measure of grace isn't in the creed I affirm or my behavior on Sunday morning. Grace is proven when I take the time to listen to my wife share her excitement about a hobby I don't find especially interesting, or how I handle the first time my child says, "I hate you," or how I respond when my boss vents his frustration on me, or how I treat the waitress who serves me. Jesus said, "No good tree bears bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree bear good fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit." Those transformed by the grace of God are known by their gracious life. Sadly, the religious life and the gracious life are often at odds. Many churches, synagogues, and mosques, rather than being orchards of tree bursting with fruit, have been barren the wasteland where grace is diminished, if not opposed. Instead of being encouraged to produce fruit, we've been trained to be fruit inspectors. We've been so busy building walls around our particular orchards that we haven't realized how ugly, gnarled, and unproductive they've become. Religion, rather than being a gracious force in the world, has been part of the problem. Okay, now I'm moving to chapter 5, Gracious Religion. A little girl, her mother, and grandmother was driving home from church one night after watching a Christian movie about the end of the world, when 5-year-old Stacy, who'd been unusually quiet, piped up from the back seat, "I want to ask Jesus into my heart." Her mother and grandmother, sitting in the front seat, instead of questioning why a 5-year-old suddenly wanted to accept Jesus, were overjoyed. Stacy's mother and grandmother were unconcerned that her decision came after watching a movie that threatened terrible consequences for all those who hadn't accepted Jesus. They didn't question whether Stacy, at the age of 5, could comprehend the complexities of committing herself to a religious faith. That night, after some discussion, they led little Stacy in a prayer in which she accepted Jesus as Lord and Savior. 5 years old. When her grandmother shared this news with me, she admitted some embarrassment. She knew fear had played a part in Stacy's decision. Unfortunately, her relief in knowing Stacy's destiny was secure was greater than her shame at the circumstances. Since the point of her religion was to get people saved, she was pleased. I understand her delight. In traditional Christianity, our children and grandchildren are damned if they die without meeting the prerequisites of salvation. This assumption worries many parents. Some traditions have responded to this anxiety with infant baptism. Others, insisting on informed consent, have posited an age of innocence during which children aren't accountable for their sins. Since no one seems able to determine precisely when this age ends, there is considerable pressure to convert children as early as possible. Good parents want to do all in their power to assure their children's eternal security. For many parents, getting their children saved is their highest priority. This is the problem with fear-based and heaven-earning religion. Any means, no matter how manipulative, to convert your children is justifiable. Since I've already paid considerable attention to the inadequacies of a religion or a relationship based on such motives, I won't belabor the point. What I find more interesting is what happened on the Monday morning after Stacy accepted Jesus into her heart. The next day, Stacy, less somber and more misbehaved. Her mother said, "You know, Stacy, a little girl who asked Jesus into her heart shouldn't act that way." Stacy replied, "Well, I can ask him out too." When Stacy's grandmother told me this story, she suggested Stacy had figured out the nature of the universe. You can choose to accept or reject God. I doubt 5-year-olds give much thought to the nature of the universe. They are, however, sensitive to fear and resistant to control. Stacy discovered at an early age how often religion resorts to such mechanisms. I should stop here today. Please correct me if you can. Bye.